We are live.
Welcome everybody to our Ask Us Anything or Ask Ex-Muslims Anything version of episode of Secular Jihadists for Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is Armin Nafabi. Version. 72 different versions we have. Yeah, and with me is Armin Nafabi. Armin, how are you today?
Good.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, we're gonna get to it. We have a lot of questions today. So this is the time when this is a public live stream, so everybody can see this, and so everybody can ask questions. So we have we are going to start with our Patreon questions. So just a quick note here: do consider going to our patreon.com/sjme and consider becoming a patron. But anyway, let's start with the questions. We'll talk about all of that.
So for people who don't know, we answer live chat questions, but before we answer live chat questions, we have to answer our patron questions because our patrons get priority. And also, if you're a patron, that means that you don't have to be here live to be able to have your questions answered. So because some people can't make it on the time, so we make it available. So if you're not a patron and you want, either because you want to make sure your questions get answered, or because you want to make sure that even if you're not here live, you can send us your questions, consider becoming a patron. Link in the description. Ali, we need to go through the patron questions fast because we have like 10. We have 10 patron questions. This is like the
we're gonna go through that first, right?
Number of patron questions. Yeah, so we're gonna
let's go for it.
Questions, and as soon as we're done, we're gonna go through the live chat questions. Okay, so patron questions first.
First question, and by the way, some of these are really long, so when you guys ask questions, just try to make them as brief as possible. We're going to try to sum up as well as we can. D. Boudreau is asking, question for the both of you. What historical event do you never tire learning about, and why do you find it so fascinating? Thanks. Good question, Armin. Go first.
Well, as of right now, anything about the early history of Islam, I find extremely fascinating. And I wish I had, I have read some, and I have added a lot to read upon this because it's the most fascinating thing ever. The reason why I find it fascinating is because it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, because not everything about it is like, the more people look into it, the more it seems like our current understanding of what happened in early history of Islam is wrong. I'm not coming up with like conspiracy theories that people have come up with. Like, I don't know what, like that our understanding is like, it's not like that we don't know. Like, there's so many things that we don't know, and some of the information that is coming out and some of the new analysis of the primary sources that we have seems to come up, has in the past 100 years giving us conclusions that are completely different from the standard narrative of what Muslims have been telling historians, for the past 1200, like 1,000 years or so. So the fact that it's changing and it's hasn't been solved yet, and it's going through a discovery mode, it's just so fascinating. And I've studied a little bit, and I find it fascinating, and I wish, and right now I'm reading other things because I need to for the purposes of our streams and everything, but I wish I had more time to dedicate to that, because it's just so, the fact that it's an ongoing process of this, like many other things from history around that time has already been analyzed, but this one is still being, anyways, Ali wants me to.
No, I was going to say the same thing. The late antiquity period of history, that's where a lot of the Islamic history is. There's like a 200-year sort of vacuum. There's a period of history, in that history that is just, we don't really know what happened. I mean, the first biography of the Prophet that survived of Muhammad was published like 200 years after his death. The first collection of hadith is 215 years afterwards, and before that you had little spotty things, but it's an oral tradition. So it's really interesting. It's actually, I mean, I'm especially interested in right now because like the novel I'm writing actually revolves around some of that history that's in the background of it. So it's that I never tire of. There's a couple of people I want to mention. Tom Holland, we've had him on the show. It's one of the best episodes I think that we ever had. Like, it's the one that I enjoyed the most, at least. So do check out that episode because we talked about this very specifically, and he's a phenomenal historian. And the second thing is follow Ian D. Morris on Twitter. He usually has like really, really interesting stuff about this history. So yeah, that I think we're both aligned on that. That is one of the most fascinating historical things. Okay, second question.
Bring more guests about that.
Yeah. Sharik Siddiqui is asking, what accounts for the passionate support for the Taliban in Pakistan and amongst the diaspora? What are likely to be the knock-on effects in the region of the Taliban getting increasing influence within Pakistan once they're done with the We're Cool Now Act? And then he also wrote, he's like, I've started to point this out of late as my face and name causes confusion. I'm not Pakistani myself. Right. So why is there passionate support for the Taliban in Pakistan?
Oh, in Pakistan? Well, now or before? Because right now, Taliban is enjoying, a lot of Muslims like being on the side of the victor. Like, this is the same reason why ISIS was getting a lot of support, like, from around the world, because they were gaining a lot of territory really fast, and they looked like they were defeating superpowers. A lot of Muslims were so impressed by, it's by their by their victories, and they liked Islam being on the winning side. Again, I know a lot of Muslims don't support them, but a lot of Muslims do, and that's the fact that they were winning made a lot of Muslims want to be on the winning side and take some pride in the power of Islam and the power of an Islamic group. Like, it's hard, like, ever since World War I, it was hard to be proud of most Islamic power, given that they have been out of power ever since World War I, and the Islamic world has this inferiority complex because Islamic countries are much weaker and much more backwards than Western countries. So this inferiority complex, any time you see like ISIS winning against all odds, or now Taliban for the second time defeating a superpower. The first time defeating a superpower was the Soviet Union, and now the second time defeating a second superpower, being the United States of America. It's just hard not to see why a lot of people, a lot of Muslims would not be like, yeah, that's great. Like, we want, actually, Ali, I don't know if you've seen some Muslim Facebook pages or YouTube channels. They talk about Taliban, and you could see the comment section is so divided. Like, a lot of Muslims are like, yes, this is great. Taliban, Afghanistan has been liberated. Oh yeah, look at our Muslims brother winning and defeating the infidels and stuff. And a lot of Muslims responding to it like, are you guys kidding? Like, you guys are other Muslims responding to these Muslims like, why is there so much support for Taliban? Like, this is insane. So I see a lot of Muslims actually being shocked by other Muslims around the world, noticing how much support the Taliban has around the world in the Muslim community, and these other Muslims are actually surprised. What are you saying?
I actually think that the premise of this, like, why is there so much support? It's not a whole lot of support. I mean, there's a lot of Muslims that are actually very tired. The Taliban. It's not like it was in the late 90s, but I think the support that there is, there are two main reasons. One of the things is exactly what Armin is saying, that the Taliban have. That's where the 9/11 attacks were orchestrated. They gave Osama bin Laden the safe haven, and they fought against all of these different empires, and so did their ancestors, the Mujahideen, and they drove them all out. So there's a thing that these are part of the whole Muslim world, and they're standing up against these superpowers and these empires. So that's an element of pride. Politically in Pakistan specifically, like, there's the army in Pakistan and the intelligence agency there, the ISI, they have other political reasons for supporting the Taliban as well. I mean, they use it as a buffer against India, gives them some sort of strategic advantage, or so they think, and that's so that plays into it as well. But I think that those are the main issues. But I don't think that it's like it was. It's the way that it was in the late 90s when they first emerged.
Well, I don't know. I think like this might actually be better marketing for them than in the late 90s, because this is like the United States we're talking about. Like, defeating the United States is going to look very appealing to a lot. I mean, a lot of Islamists, like right now, the branding of the whole radical Islamist movement was on the decline because how big of a failure like ISIS ended up being. This actually might bring some of that back, you know what I mean? And also depending on how Taliban operates in Afghanistan, if they're how successful they are, if they continue, we'll see, right? But right now, is that whole movement seemed to have gotten a boost because this is great marketing for it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. With regards to Pakistan, though, I just want to mention that Pakistan does like the influence of. I mean, when we say Pakistan, we have to be more specific, like the ISI, like, because there are many groups within the Pakistan's government that don't like Taliban increasing power. But this is good for those elements in Pakistan's military that would see their influence in Afghanistan increasing, and also like as a proxy. The Taliban is basically kind of like what Hezbollah is to Iran. That's what Taliban is to Pakistan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because Hezbollah holds its own against Israel, right? Like in 2006, like they do now. So they get a lot of support because of that. Yeah.
However, I don't know if this is going to be good for. I do think, like, I don't. Ali, you correct me because you might not know this better. Boosting Taliban in Pakistan might not be as appealing for the same elements in Pakistan as boosting Taliban in Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, if the Islamists in Pakistan become too powerful, that would be a competing source of influence to the military. I don't think that the military wants to use Taliban as a proxy, but not as a competing source of power.
Yeah.
So that might be an issue. Like, this is like
that has happened before. Remember when they used to talk about the Pakistani Taliban and the Afghan Taliban? You have the Haqqani people, and so the Pakistan, like in Swat, when that in Swat, which is in the northwestern frontier, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan, is where that girl was flogged. And then that caused a huge issue, and then the Taliban basically taken over. So the Pakistani Taliban, the Pakistan army went up against, but with the Afghan Taliban, they were actually trying to form alliances. They were more sympathetic. So that is going to be a complication. I don't know if that's going to resurface again, but it could. You're right. So, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, let's move on. So Dolly Lars Sarcasmo is asking, in the last few years, Egyptian president became more dictator and canceled human rights organizations in Egypt and banned the HRW, that's the Human Rights Watch website, and gave unlimited authority to Egyptian army and police officers. The question is, what do you think about the extrajudicial executions by the Egyptian army in North Sinai? And then there's a link to an Amnesty article. It says that the army is killing unarmed men. And it's just a hint about the actual accident because no one can see what's going on there. I'm not as familiar with this specific, the extrajudicial executions in North Sinai. Do you know much about that, Armin?
I don't know much about this specifically, but even before this report, I know Egypt was, I don't know, is it Turkey or Egypt when it comes to the highest number of reporters in jail per capita? I think it's either Egypt or, well, I mean, if it's not Egypt will be number 2, I think. But human rights level, Egypt is like worse than ever before. Like, this is, I mean, I don't know if it's worse than ever before, but this is worse than Mubarak era, like, which is saying a lot. This is like also has to make us, like, I know a lot of us here, we are anti Islam activists and we pro secularism. However, this is a reminder that you can't just be anything that is not as Islamic as Morsi. We should, like, if we have to choose between two different governments just because one of them is more Islamic and one of them less Islamic, that shouldn't give you an automatic go with the one that is less Islamic, because we have more standards here than just not Islamic, right? Like, this regime in Egypt is, a lot of ex-Muslims were supporting this because they were like, okay, yes, this guy is a dictator, but at least the Muslim Brotherhood didn't came to power, so it's good that this happened. I mean, I don't know. Like, this seems like the worst thing possible for Egypt right now. We're not just going to support something that seems to be more secular just because they're more secular. Like, we do care about human rights violations, and Egypt right now, this government is the worst thing that we could ever imagine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you think, Ali? Like, I do think a lot of us ex-Muslims, like a lot of ex-Muslims are guilty of, like, if it's less Islamic is good. And this is one of those examples of this not being true, right? Like, you have secular dictators that could end up being a lot worse than Islamic.
They have been actually historically, like
Yeah.
in the Middle East. I mean, this is one of the problems that in the West we always think of secularism as part and parcel of liberalism and democracy and justice and equality. That's how we think of secularism. But over there, secular dictators have always been, a lot of them have been tyrants. Right? They've been, you've got the Shah of Iran. You had the secular dictators in Egypt. You have Bashar al-Assad. You had all these people. So it's always been a totally different association.
I know some people are going to get upset and say, like, look, Sisi is not secular. What are you talking about? They're using Islam here and there and there, and these are there's anti-blasphemy laws, and atheists are in trouble. Yeah, we're speaking relative to.
He replaced the Muslim Brotherhood. That's a point, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood, and yeah, and another thing, like, I just want to make sure that people don't, like, if some people might think like it come up with the wrong interpretation of what you're saying. Ali wasn't suggesting that Sisi and the Shah of Iran and all of them, like, they're all dictators, but the level of human rights violations are extremely different. Like, I would argue like Assad and Sisi have much higher human rights violations than the Shah of Iran, even though the Shah of Iran was still a dictator. Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on. Secular Proton is asking, are you guys for single payer, public, or private healthcare? So I'm for a hybrid system, something like what they have in France. And France really has one of the best healthcare systems. There's several components of the healthcare system. Here in Canada, we've got the single payer system, and that's great because everybody has access to it. It's affordable. It's you pay your a certain amount of taxes and everybody gets free healthcare, which is an amazing thing. Nobody takes that for granted. But there's another component of healthcare, and that is the actual quality of the healthcare that's being provided. And a lot of that really comes from competition, right? When you have good research and development happening, you've got competition in terms of who provides better technology, better services, the biomedical engineers, and all those advances. So that part of it really comes from competition. So if you have the private healthcare, if you have a private system, and then you have a public component of it that is giving them competition, then it drives quality up because of competition, and it drives costs down. Right. So that's actually an element of that we don't see in. I don't think we see it in Canada as much as the U.S. or in France, or Germany.
The issue with that is going to be that, I don't know, the people, like, I don't know, if you have a competition with the private, then the private, I don't know, the people who need, like, the people who are going to be in the public option are going to be the most riskiest ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the private one will have different prices for the different risk levels. So everybody that has the highest risk will go to the public one, and then the public option will have to bear much higher costs than it would have if it didn't have the private competition. So that's what a lot of people will say. Like, you get the worst cases, the costliest people will become in the public one option, and the government now has to bear a lot more cost than if it didn't have that competition. What do you think about the alternative model? Again, I don't know. I'm just asking. Okay, I don't know if this works or not. What do you think about just giving people, the government, instead of spending its taxpayer on healthcare itself, just giving people the money, like, that could only be spent on healthcare? And depending on how bad your situation is, like if somebody has higher risk, higher health issues, they get more fund. Like that money that was supposed to go in funding healthcare, instead just is given to individuals as cash that could only be spent on healthcare, and the people who have more issues get more money. Do you know what I mean? The reason why that might be a superior model is because it will first of all, the people are being supported by the government for health issues, but at the same time, competition will be there. And also the level of help that you're getting is correlated to how much help you need. Like people with higher preconditions will actually get more funded, right? So this doesn't kill, would that ever work? Like getting tax credits for spending on healthcare? And competition will still be around if you did that?
Yeah, it depends on whether you're doing it before or after. I don't think it's that much different from everybody sort of paying their taxes, and that same taxpayer money is given to, it's like, the public options where the government acts as a big insurance company, and then
this model will, but that model kills competition. This one doesn't. No.
No, I still think it would kill competition. I don't think it would work out. But either way, whatever happens.
Okay.
Whatever happens, you're going to have to regulate it, right? I mean, you have to. It's a very complex thing. So even if you have a public-private hybrid, you're going to have to make sure that's regulated in certain ways. When it comes to preconditions, when it comes to like keeping costs down and things like. But that's a much longer discussion.
Okay, I'm just going to say that my model wouldn't kill competition is because you're giving the people the money, and the people have to choose which healthcare to go, which insurance and which healthcare to go to. So that's why, because the people have to choose, it will actually encourage competition rather killing competition. That's what I will say. Yeah, and by choosing not just the healthcare, but also choosing which insurance they go to. And also you could also have regulations where it kills any kind of cooperation when it comes to insurance, like breaking them apart, making sure that there are, breaking monopolies between insurance companies. Those regulations, I think, might help to encourage competition. Anyways, we talked a lot about this. Let's go move to the next. Yeah.
Okay, so next question. Molly is saying, in at least one video, I've heard Armin make the claim that there is no God. As someone who doesn't believe in God, I disagree with this. How do you know that a God doesn't exist? Maybe you misspoke and actually meant that you don't believe there is a God. Similarly, I've heard Richard Dawkins say that he thinks it's more probable that a God doesn't exist than that one does exist. Personally, I disagree with this as well because I see no way to determine probabilities here. What are your thoughts about this? Do you think that we should be advocating for the narrative of we don't know whether or not there's a God, so pretending that you do rather than there is no God?
No, I will say there's no God. Okay. I say there's no God because I don't go out of my way to say, well, we don't know if there's no Santa Claus. There could be a Santa Claus. There's no way to not prove there's no Santa Claus. I don't go and say like, okay, we don't know if werewolves are not real. We don't know if Peter Pan is not a real story. Like, we don't say these things. Like, yes, technically there is, like, you could come up with a scenario where there is Peter Pan, there is Santa Claus, there is werewolf, and you could come up with a way to come up with a scenario that those things are real and there's no way for you to disprove. Like, maybe there's a Peter Pan somewhere in this, in this bubble that nobody that is completely blind, the entire world is blind to, and there's no way for you to disprove that this Peter Pan world in this bubble doesn't exist. There's no way you could disprove that. I could come up with a scenario that there's no way for you to disprove that. But we don't, these things, we don't treat them as possible enough for us to treat like as if they're real. Like, when the possibility of something becomes so close to zero, we talk about them as if they are not real, right? It's only with God. Like, if you want to be philosophical, and then, yeah, if you want to be accurate with your language and make sure that you're not saying something that is like, can philosophically make sense, say like, okay, I don't have any evidence for the existence of God, but there are some definitions of God that could be real and I can't disprove it, so I just lack a belief in God, but I'm not saying there's no God. And that's only for a deistic God, because for the other gods, the biblical gods, we can know that those gods are not don't exist because they're self-contradictory. But a deistic God, I can't prove it, therefore I lack belief in it, I'm not going to claim it doesn't exist. You could say that if you're being like, if you want to be like accurate and philosophical and all, but in the day-to-day life, we don't treat things that we have a possibility so close to zero. We don't treat them like that. We just say there is no werewolf, there is no Peter Pan, there is no Santa Claus, and there is no God. If you treat God differently, you're treating God different. Like, you're putting God on a pedestal compared to all those other things. And I think it's completely fair to assign possibility to these, like probability to these things. You say like, well, you just said, personally, I disagree because I don't think there's any way to determine probabilities here. There absolutely is. And here's how you do it. How many things can I come up with? How many claims can I come up with that there's no way to disprove? There's infinite number of claims that I could come up with. As long as your imagination is pretty good enough, there's infinite number of claims that I could come up with that there's no way for you to prove that it's true, or that you could disprove that it's true. Given that there are infinite numbers of them, the possibility of each one of them is going to be 1 over infinity, because that's how many of them there are, right? So given that, what is 1 over infinity? 1 over infinity is not 0, but it's the closest thing to it. It's epsilon. It is basically almost zero, and that's how we're going to treat them. So close to zero that we're going to just treat them practically. It makes sense for us to treat them as zero.
Okay. Yeah, I just have two things to say about this. First is it depends on what you mean by God, because if you're talking about God as like, Einstein or Spinoza's definition of God, then, it is genuinely, you probably assigning probabilities to it is a little bit more difficult. If you're talking about the theistic God who wrote all these books, about who you can sleep with and what you should eat and not eat and how much you should pay for your female slaves versus male slaves. If you have that kind of God, it's almost certainly non-existent. So I'm very comfortable with it. The second thing I want to say is that there's a difference between knowing and believing. Right? So I could say, do I know whether there's a God or not? No, I don't know. But do I believe in God? No, I don't believe in it. So there's a believing in something and saying whether you know or not whether something exists are two completely different things.
Susanna is reminding everybody to like the stream. Guys, like the video. Okay, it helps our channel. All right, next question.
D. Boudreau is asking thoughts on the Northern Alliance. So Armin, just take this one and then we'll move just really quickly. Northern Alliance.
Well, I don't know how to do this very quickly because it's very fascinating. So, okay, so
because we're still only halfway through the patron questions, by the way.
Okay, we're talking about the alliance, the movement in north of Afghanistan that was resisting the Taliban from the 1990s all the way to 2001, right? Started with the Massoud guy, Ahmad Shah Massoud.
Shah Massoud.
And now it's back again with his son. So the story behind, Taliban before the 2001, before the 9/11 attacks, OU had control over almost all of Afghanistan, but not all of Afghanistan, only almost all of Afghanistan. 10% of Afghanistan, which was in the northern part, was under the control of this Northern Alliance, which is this is also a tribal war because Taliban is a Pashtun, ethnically Pashtun group, and the northern resistance, Northern Alliance, is a Tajik group. The interesting thing is that the leader of this group, the founder of this group, was assassinated 2 days before 9/11.
9/11, yeah.
2 days before 9/11, and it's interesting because he was warning everybody about an attack coming about into US, and he was the person that was warning the world that something is about to happen, and he was assassinated 2 days before the attacks. And the understanding is that this is the strongest group resistance against the Taliban back then. And again, history is repeating itself because now that Taliban is back in power, the only resistance is another Massoud. His name is also Massoud, the son of Shah Massoud, and they're the only resistance remaining to Taliban in the same exact valley that his father was. Like it completely history is repeating itself. But another interesting thing about this is that Ahmad Shah Massoud, the investigations later showed that the probable reason why he was assassinated was because bin Laden knowing that attacks are about to happen, knowing that there's probably going to be a retaliation against him in Afghanistan, he wanted to give a gift to the Taliban to make sure that he's going to have the support of the Taliban when the Americans attack Afghanistan. So the assassination of Ahmad Shah Massoud was a gift by bin Laden to the Taliban because that was their main resistance, right? So go on.
No, I was going to say Ahmad Shah Massoud and bin Laden also trained together, right? During the Mujahideen time, they were trained together. They fought against the Soviets together. So Ahmad Shah Massoud also had a lot of knowledge about, the caves and the underground networks and everything in Afghanistan. And there was a fear that when the U.S. came in, and they retaliated, then he could ally with them and he could give them a tactical advantage in the war as well. So there were several reasons why his assassination was, where they had to do it before 9/11.
Right. So that was the first Northern Alliance resistance from the 1990s to 2001. And now that his son is now resisting Taliban, now the discussion is in the same goddamn valley. I don't know how amazing it is that things are happening the same way as before. Now the discussion was that because he was calling the Taliban, and a lot of people were saying that maybe there's going to be peace, maybe he's going to accept the Taliban and stop fighting. But I don't know if anything has changed since I heard this. But the last report has been that when he had to call the Taliban, he was like, "Nope, we're not going to bend the knee." and come at us. And the Taliban was like, okay. And now the Taliban is moving to that valley to maybe remove the final resistance. We'll see what happens. But this is the only group that has ever been able to resist Taliban, a full Taliban takeover. And we'll see if his son is going to be as successful as his dad. And we're going to see if Al-Qaeda will have a comeback as well under the Taliban, just like before, or not. So anything. You know how sometimes they say history repeats itself, and sometimes that's actually not true? This one is such a mirror image of all of those things that is actually kind of scary. Anyways, so.
Okay, so next question comes from Stephanie Seidel. And she's saying, you have produced quite some content about both Trump and Biden. Since you're both Canadian, would it not be an idea to produce more on Trudeau too? So here's the thing.
Well, now it is.
There's an election that's about to happen here in Canada. Trudeau's called an election, so we're probably going to look out for that episode. Generally, in the past, what's happened is that Trump and Biden, like the U.S. presidency, for instance, has a lot more impact on a lot of the topics that we talk about, like U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and the way that it affects, the Muslim world. Before that, the war on terror. Whereas the Trudeau in Canada, it's usually about, you want to build this building. No, I don't want to build this building. That kind of thing. So it's usually not as relevant. But we definitely will have now this year at least an episode on the whole Trudeau thing. We'll see.
The snap election actually makes sense. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, because the current Liberal Party has a minority, and they're hoping, given what the polls show, and given how successful Trudeau has been when it comes to the tackling the Cove, okay,
the Cove,
the VAC rates in Canada. The VAX rate.
Do you want to explain why we're doing that? Just so we don't get kicked off of YouTube, right? So
YouTube thinks like we're saying something that we're not if we actually use the words. Okay, the VAX rates in Canada has been so much higher than most other even developed countries, like so high. Like it has been such a major success. United States. So like I don't know. A lot of people hate Trudeau, but this has been a major success. Like this has objectively been a major success, and for all the things that you might hate about Trudeau, like it's really good to see how successful this whole thing has been in Canada, and strategically, given the results of how well the job was done, it makes. I'm not saying it's going to work because we don't know. Sometimes, like you have snap elections, and you actually end up. You were trying to go from a minority government to a majority government because of good performance or something like that. But there are, like, I think the Conservatives before this tried the snap election, and they went from being a minority to remaining a minority. I think that was the Conservative when they tried that. It didn't work. But overall, it worked most of the time. Like most of the time when the polls show that this is the time to have a snap election, and they had a snap election, it ended up being a good result. So this, based on historical, based on how it worked most of the time, it makes sense even though, by the way, Trudeau said that they will never have snap elections, and people were like, we're kind of skeptical, because if it makes sense to have snap elections, you will do it. So this makes completely strategic sense. To come back to that, the people who are against Trudeau might want to spin this around and say, well, actually, it's not might, they actually are. It makes strategic sense for them to say, but like, look, you're using the whole Cove situation as a way to gain power. You're using the Cove to gain power, boo. But again, strategically, this makes complete sense. And I do enjoy, like a lot of people who are anti-Trudeau, I do enjoy triggering them by constantly saying, Trudeau has like some corruption issues, and some racist issues, and some other issues, and which we could talk about. But when it comes to actually people's lives and what matters, and helping Canadian citizens, this whole Cove situation shows that that the positives from that outweighs anything that he has done wrong. Like this has been such a major success, and I don't know how anybody could.
And you also have to look at the alternatives. I mean, we all have our issues with Trudeau. We've talked about the whole regressive left thing and how he kowtows to that. But ultimately, you've got the Conservatives, and then you have the NDP and here. So I mean, I'm going to be voting Liberal this time again. We're voting for Trudeau's party again. So there we go. Let's move on. Anne Marin is asking, So Armin, we're still at the patron question, so let's just go really quick on this. I think that we have covered this in a previous episode. So she's saying, what are your thoughts on the evacuation progress in Afghanistan at this point? It sounds like it's going much better now, but I'm interested in your perspectives. There's so many people still in danger, and getting out often still means a very hard life. But I'm glad more people are getting out than expected. You're absolutely right. I mean, we've done this. I think we've done 2 episodes on Afghanistan recently. Well, one was before, and the second was after, the Taliban actually took over. So this has been, and that was, I think, our most recent episode, the one that we did before this Q&A. So we talked about this in detail, and yeah, it's right now. It has been the way that this has been done. I think everybody agrees that it wasn't done right. It was done in a pretty bad way. It could have been done better. So I hope more of them get out. And I hope that they ramp it up.
So right now, this is the evacuation that is being done right now. It's a historical record. Like, they broke the record in the highest number of people evacuated from a place in history. I think 2 days ago, yesterday or 2 days ago, I don't know. I don't know how time passes, so sorry, but I think it was 16,000 people in one day, which was like a record, and now they broke that record as well with 19,000 people. So this is like right now, this is crazy evacuation process. Nothing like this has ever been done in history before. So this is pretty impressive. However, the issue is this shouldn't have been needed. This record, like, the reason why people are still critical, like, people are like, oh yeah, that's pretty impressive, but the fact that this is needed is just indicates poor planning. The people who want to defend that were like, guys, okay, this is poor planning. However, nobody, like, it's easy for us to criticize this, but nobody had predicted this fast of a fall. Okay, so we who are like sitting back and we're like, oh, you should have seen this coming. Nobody saw this coming. So that's the major like, I'm not saying that justifies their poor planning and stuff like that, but that is one defense that you could have. One defense is like, show me the people who were predicting this happening this fast, and okay, then they should have been charged. But you don't have anyone like that predicted something like this. This was the thing that wasn't impossible to predict, that everyone already predicted. A Taliban takeover was predicted, and people knew that the Taliban takeover is going to happen. That was predicted. The speed at which it happened, nobody predicted that. So, okay, so there's that. And another thing that people come up with the defense of Biden. Again, I'm not saying this is justified or not. I'm just putting it out there so for you to consider. Another thing is that people, the previous government of Afghanistan was not allowing this process of evacuation to happen earlier, because that they were saying that this would signal a win for the Taliban. Like, at that point, they were still thinking maybe Taliban is going to be power sharing or something like that, and they were like, this is going to be a morale boost and basically a morale kill for our side, and that's why they were like standing in the way for the evacuation happening earlier. I don't know if that is true. I don't know if that is actually just like a justification or not. I'm just putting it out there for you to consider.
Yeah, I do think that they do have a point. Like, the Biden administration does have a point that after a 20-year war, when you're getting your troops out, it was not going to be smooth. It was going to be messy. There was going to be, whoever did it, whether it was Trump, whether it was Obama, whoever did it, there would have been a massive amount of criticism. If it wasn't this issue, it would have been some other issue. It would have been a problem either way. So I don't know. Let's see if he survived. I think politically he's going to survive it, but let's see.
We're just being such stereotypical liberals. Like, we're not like we're making right-leaning people and progressive hate us because, like, look, they're supporting Trudeau, they're supporting Biden, they're anti-progressive, these are just like mainstream liberals. We're just being mainstream liberal.
Yeah, okay, well, let's just see what happens. Send us some questions that make us bust out of that.
Yeah.
Music guy is saying, another Taliban question: with the Taliban takeover, Pakistan's trading is boosted 50%. Is Iran also benefiting from this? Most countries have closed their borders, but Pakistan is sending lorry after lorry of goods to the Taliban, meaning that they're leaving it wide open. Will Pakistan now try to take over Afghanistan? I don't know, man. That's a lot of speculation. I don't think they're going to take over. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that would be.
They don't want,
like they don't want to, they can't. That would be insane.
I mean, they're already really, really upset. Like they're scared of the influx of refugees that are going to come in from Afghanistan and Pakistan. I mean, that's what happened in the 80s, right? So they had all of these refugees that came in, and with them came in all of these weapons, like the Kalashnikovs, all these like Russian AK-47s, and the drugs. So it was a disaster at the time that it happened. So I don't know if they want to go the other way and actually take over the whole place. I think that's too speculative. But anyway, let's.
Yeah,
is Iran benefiting?
Like, okay, so it depends on who in Iran you're talking about, and it also very much depends. But some of the things that you could judge right now that could change in the future is that Ashraf Ghani was taking very much anti-Iran government position in the past few days, even like past few months of his being in power. So the Iranian government is welcoming the fact that he's not in power anymore. So they like that. It seems like it's possible for current Iranian regime to have a better relationship with the Taliban that they have with the previous government. Ashraf Ghani was like threatening Iran's government, like with like cutting off water and stuff like that, and that was becoming very annoying to the Iran's government. So. And also, Iran's government is very much close to wants to maintain a closer relationship to China, and so Taliban being a proxy of Pakistan, and Pakistan being a puppet of China, will kind of indirectly, in some people argue, make the Taliban a proxy of China. So having good relationship with Taliban will, make this whole China's Belt and Road Initiative going through Iran, going through Pakistan, and now maybe also going through Afghanistan, maybe bring all these governments closer together, and maybe their unity will help their security and economic measures, and become having a government in Afghanistan that is not a puppet of United States like the one before it is going to make it easier for the Islamic Republic of Iran to create like a unit, like an economic bloc in that whole region with the help of China. So it might like, yes, there are going to be some issues that Islamic Republic is going to be hurting from, for example, the influx of refugees, and also Taliban being anti-Shia and all. We don't know how anti-Shia they're going to go. I know there were some massacres that Music Guy brought to our attention. But again, Taliban sometimes says like, well, we can't control all of our groups, but we're going to be able to control our groups for these things not to happen once we have more power. I don't know how likely that is, but these are the initial takes. Like, it could hurt Islamic Republic in some ways, but help them in security, economic ways, in other ways. But this is all speculations, and things could change dramatically. But these are the initial takes. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. So the last patron question, and after that, we're going to go to all you guys' stuff. So, I mean, we'll go a little bit extra today if we can. So Music Guy is saying, will Hezbollah cause sanctions on Lebanon due to Iran sending oil tankers to Lebanon for their fuel shortage? The Lebanon Central Bank has been finding fuel elsewhere, but Hezbollah is interfering. So is Hezbollah going to lead to invite sanctions on Lebanon because Iran's sending them oil tankers? Okay.
I mean, I don't know. How could you sanction a country that is like devastated economically? Like, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Yeah.
The country is on a free fall economically, and you're like, oh, we're going to threaten you with economic hardship. Like, look at the country. Like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, who would do? Like, first of all, anybody who does that, wouldn't I get like the worst? Wouldn't the entire international community come down upon like really Lebanon right now? Economic sanctions? Are you serious? Like, maybe sanctioning like certain bankers, or I mean, Hezbollah itself is like sanctioned already. Like, are you going to sanction the rest of Lebanon? Like, I don't understand, like, especially right now. So I don't know. I don't think so. The Lebanon Central Bank has been finding fuel elsewhere. Yeah. Also, yeah. So Iran is using this as an opportunity to be like, look, Iran's government is the only one right now that is coming to the aid of Lebanon. So basically, this is an opportunity for Hezbollah to say like, look, they told you that Hezbollah is an economic cost to Lebanon, but when the whole world has abandoned you, it's us that is now bringing you fuel. So it's actually the opposite of what everyone's telling you, which is such an insane line of reasoning right now that they're using to market themselves, because Hezbollah is part of the reason why this whole thing is happening. Like, a major part of the reason, like not all of it, but a major part of the reason why this whole devastation is like everybody is now suffering, and like everybody is responsible, and Hezbollah gets a lot of credit for the suffering right now. But now some oil is coming from Iran because of Hezbollah, and they're like, oh, look, we're actually the saviors. Like, what a what a joke. Like, yeah. So
Okay, let's go to the public questions. 11:10 p.m. from Afif Kaja. Oh, super
before
chat.
Thank you so much, Secular Rarity, $5 super chat. Really appreciate it. He's saying thank you to you both. Thank you. That's
Thank you, Secular Rarity. So Afif Kaja at 11:10 p.m. is saying, what are your thoughts? On one hand, you have the hand chopping Taliban, and on the other, the Bachchabaz, or the boy raping Afghan Pashtuns. Which is worse?
Don't use the R word. Say RAPE. But go on.
Okay, well, yeah. So there's I don't know. I think that this whole thing about the Afghan Pashtuns, I think this is generalizing. Yes, there is an issue of the Bachchabazi and all that, but yeah, I don't think it's the same thing. The Taliban is an organization that has a certain ideology, right, that they all adhere to and that they follow. It's organized. The Afghan Pashtuns are not. They're very diverse. I mean, not all of them are RAPING boys. So it's I don't think that's a fair comparison.
And a lot of them are like,
yeah, but you can't say Afghan Pashtuns like
it. No, but it's hard for you to find a commander or like that is not doing that. Like, it's actually rare for you to find that. Like, it's really bad. It's really devastating.
It is bad.
Yeah, I mean, when the question is like, which is worse? I mean, to who? Like, in what aspect? You know what I mean? Like, to the child who's being abused, well, probably whoever is abusing them. Like, it's and again, like, right now that Taliban is in power, like, in what situation, in what context? Like, would it be good if both of these were in power and they were fighting against each other and they had civil war, or would it be better if Taliban took over and there was less civil war? Again, to who? In what context? How are we measuring things? It's like, Taliban inherently more violent and more, in violation of human rights? Yes. But how is that going to translate in the field on people's lives if they're power or if they're competing with another group? That's a different question. Are we talking about judging people's principles and values, or are we talking the consequences of a group being in power or not? And where? In Kabul or in a village in Afghanistan, or are we measuring all of Afghanistan? These are complicated questions. It's better if you narrow down the question to something specific and then ask it, rather than coming up with
generalizations.
Comparison. Yeah,
that's a point. So Stony Lonesome at 11:16 p.m. is saying, what policies should the USA implement to help deal with the war on drugs and the Mexican drug war?
Legalize drugs, obviously.
All drugs? You think that all drugs should be legalized?
Yeah, that would end it overnight. Isn't that like the obvious answer? Like, does anybody, like, okay, even if you don't want to legalize all drugs, just legalize the ones that you can. Like, isn't that the obvious answer? Like, who disagrees with that?
Yeah, like, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I think, I think it's fine.
I'm so amazed that this is like one of the world's, one of the biggest problems in the world is like the drug cartels in Mexico, and all these money is being wasted in Mexico and United States and everywhere else, trying to like everybody knows the answer, and you could do it like this, and so much cost to people's lives and taxpayers and everything will be solved, and they're just not doing this because like drugs are banned. We shouldn't legalize drugs. Like this is so obviously the answer. I don't even know how like people's emotional feelings towards like legalizing something that they have a moral issue with, that is stopping from fixing such an obvious solution to such a big problem. Like, people are dying over people's emotional feelings over legalizing things that they
I think for this, I don't think it's a totally simple solution, though. I think there's a lot of issues with it. I mean, these are like, if you have like extremely addictive drugs coming out, then you have the what does it do to the healthcare system? What does it do to kids? Who are able to get? There's a whole bunch of other questions that come in. So I don't think it's as easy.
What will happen to the less kids will have their dads killed by the drug cartel. The government will have more money, a lot more money to deal with, addiction issues. If the money that you save from all the military equipment and the policing and the border issues, that would be astronomically higher than what you need to actually go and fix
Yeah,
issues.
I don't know about that. I think the number of people whose parents are getting killed because of it, and whether if you legalize it, suddenly it's available to everybody. I don't think we can really make an assessment of what those numbers would be.
Again, we have already seen this when places where they have legalized it. We have seen the results. So this is not necessarily guesswork. Okay?
I'm down with. I support the legalization. I just don't think it's as easy a question. I understand the side that's concerned about how we're going to regulate it, right? And then you run into the same problem. If you're regulating it and it's not available to everybody, then you're still going to have an underground market. So anyway,
Ali, can you hear my dog crying in the background? Should I make her stop? Should I get some?
No, I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything.
Okay, good.
All right. So right now I'm just going to the ones that are tagged with secular jihadists. So Stelling Lonesome at 11:32 p.m. Do you guys prefer European cars, American cars, or Japanese cars? Oh my God!
I prefer like from somebody that had a car, a really nice car for many years. I now can tell you without a doubt, it's better to not have a car. Okay. It's just like unless you need your work, you're commuting every day, and you need to go to work. But for most, I think a lot of people, especially people who live in city centers and they don't have to go outside of the city centers or anything like that, I think the most idiotic thing you could do is to buy a car. Like it's much better to use public transport or like even Uber or something like that. The money that you save on insurance and maintenance and whatever the car payments that you opt into, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Even I am committed to the fact, even if I become like a billionaire, I don't think I would ever buy a car ever again. Like it just makes absolutely no sense. I just keep calling Ubers.
I'm a fan of cars. Like I like Ubers too, but I'm a fan of cars. So yeah, I generally I don't really believe in I'm not into getting the really expensive flashy cars. Like I tend to like things that are comfortable and have good fuel efficiency. So I've always liked Japanese cars way more. I think that if you go in a BMW SUV, it's just not as comfortable as like a Hyundai Santa Fe. I mean, it's just or a Toyota Venza. I mean, those are, I don't know. Like, I just think I like the comfort, easy drive, fuel efficiency.
Oh, yeah. If I ever was forced to buy another car, I would buy a van.
Yeah.
It's just the utility you get from that is much more than just any other car.
Yeah, like that works better. Okay, so Idris is asking at 11:32 p.m. Hi, what do you think about Algeria cutting with Morocco, citing an alleged covert action to start the forest fires?
Wait,
I don't
what?
know about this.
Say that again.
Apparently, Algeria cut ties with Morocco because they were citing.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Do you know about this?
I saw that. No, I just saw the headline, but I didn't go into it. I saw the headline, and I was like, "What?" And I have not clicked on it, and I have not read it, but it's on my to read list. So we'll get back on that once I actually do more reading on it.
Yeah. So 11:38 p.m. Bulbul is saying, do you think the huge influx of Afghan refugees in Europe and North America will lead to even more issues with Islamic extremism in these countries? These guys are a little bit. It's slightly different than what happened with Syria. I mean, a lot of these people are actually fleeing the Taliban, right?
But they were fleeing ISIS.
They were fleeing Assad more. Like there was ISIS, but it was really a lot of it was the Assad issue. So there's, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Yes,
I don't think somebody is not an Islamist because they're fleeing the Taliban. Like you could be completely.
Yes, yeah, I agree, but I think you'll have the usual problems that you have with refugees, and I hope that they learn from it. They have like Norway and Sweden have these integration plans, and they have sort of orientation plans for all these new immigrants, and a lot of these things have worked out for them. They've had more success with it than some of the other sort of Western European countries. So they should look at models of European countries that have been able to integrate and assimilate these immigrants and these refugees more successfully without issues. Canada is one of those countries too, and try to emulate those models as much as they can. But it's something.
Yeah, and also as a globalist, I actually I would actually say that this is the best way to fight Islam is to because we don't have access to Muslims. Maybe we should get Muslims to come to European countries, because that's the best way to work on them and brainwash them to secularism.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I'm joking, but I'm just saying, like, this is like might have like an influence. Like, a lot of them go back. A lot of them have an influence back on their home countries. And guys, like, a lot of the predictions that people had to that were coming up with when it comes to the death of Europe, or like Islam will become like Sharia is taking over Europe, and this is the end of like the Western civilization. Those things did not come true. Like, so just keep that in mind. Like, even like countries like Germany that were supposed to like now go down on Islamism are actually now economically benefiting from the refugees that they brought in. So
Yeah,
a lot of that fear mongering is actually were completely unjustified. So
it's very unjustified. I mean, there are issues, but the thing is, like, these immigrants, they actually want to be assimilated. There's this idea that we shouldn't integrate and assimilate them because we're trying to change their culture. No, they want to, and they're coming here. They a lot of them, they want to know. They're living in a new society. They're going to put their kids in school here. They want to know how to navigate this new thing. So it's not that it's a win-win situation both ways.
we got a super chat. Super chat from Aluza.
Aluza Akbar. This is for me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Aluza, for the $5 super chat. Very generous. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is for Ali. That's for me. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? I already know Armin is pizza phobic. I don't know what's wrong with you, Armin. But anyway, pineapple on pizza.
I like pineapple on pizza. What the fuck? I actually just recently came out and said on my Facebook, Aluza, if you knew anything about me, I came out on Facebook and I officially said pineapple on pizza is the greatest idea that humanity has ever had.
So I guess you're even more passionate about this than I am. But the thing is, pizza is a wonderful vegetable. Because when it comes to the health thing, the best thing about pizza is that you can make it as unhealthy as you want, and you can make it as healthy as you want to. Like, you can do anything you want with pizza. It's totally customizable in terms of how healthy it's going to be. Now, coming down to the whole pineapple on pizza thing, in certain cases, yes. If you have a Hawaiian pizza, then yes, pineapple is essential on it. If you have something with chicken, pineapple goes well on it too. Now, the question whether chicken should be on pizza or not, that's a whole different question. I think that's more controversial than whether you should have pineapple on pizza. Chicken just does not belong on pizza. But anyway, if chicken is there, then pineapple makes it better.
Okay, I would argue that there's absolutely no pizza that would not be improved with some pineapple on it. I would challenge anybody to find a pizza that would not become automatically, objectively better.
I don't think it would be improved, but I think that it would be. I don't think that it'll become bad. It'll still be really, really good with the pineapple. I mean, the pineapple will. I don't know if it'll add to anything, but it will be good. It'll be good. Pineapple on pizza is good. All right. Anyway, should we continue with this topic for the next half an hour? Or should we move on to other questions? It's up to you.
Move on to other questions. Yeah.
Oh, good choice. So Aluz Akbar is also saying the news channels are already moving on from the evacuation. There are no gory pictures coming out. Frankly, I'm shocked that it hasn't been more chaotic. I agree with that. I mean, the whole thing should have been a much bigger disaster. This is, and that's what I'm saying. Like, again, you're going to accuse us of being like straight up liberals, but this is if Trump had done it, if Obama had done it, if it wasn't the Taliban taking over immediately, there would have been some issue or another. This was such a complicated thing. There's an entire generation of people who grew up under, while the U.S. was occupying Afghanistan. This entire generation, like people who were born at the start of the war, are now over 18. They're 20 years old, right? I mean, this has been a huge thing. So you could not get out of it without something going bad. So the fact that it's not more chaotic is kind of the important thing is like how it all turns out. Right, how it all turns out over the next few weeks.
I hope people don't. And like, here's the thing: we're saying things are not as bad as a lot of people anticipated. People could take this and be like, "Oh, you guys like," because there are certain bad things that are happening. There are absolutely bad things that are happening. Some groups of people have been massacred. Taliban is around and looking for people. Some groups of Taliban, not all of Taliban, but some groups of Taliban are going around and trying to find people who work with the Americans and trying to find them. Like, they're right. And the Taliban in Kabul are saying, "Oh, that's not okay. We're going to go find them and we're going to stop them from doing that," right? And then some Taliban right now is saying like, "Okay, women, stay home for now because we don't have full control over all of our Taliban member, and if you're out in the streets, these other Talibans that we don't have control over, they might abuse you, and we want to avoid abuse. Eventually, we're going to get a hold of everybody and make sure that they understand the new rules is that not everybody has to have a burqa. That's what the Taliban in Kabul are saying. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but it's not the same as the Taliban 20 years ago, okay? Some people are being massacred. Some people are being killed. There are certain Taliban that are going and like, where are your girls? If they're above 12, they belong to us now. This is like spoils of war. Like, give us your girls as wives, right? So those things are happening. And if we say things are not as bad as a lot of people anticipated, it's not a dismissal of how bad these incidences are. Like, these are horrible, right? This is very horrible. Like, there was like, some Hazari groups Shia groups were like killed, like none of them, okay? But this 9 Hazaris that were massacred, for example, is not the same as the Taliban 20 years ago. Again, this is not an endorsement of the current Taliban. This is like their survival. Right now, like a lot of money is on the line. The Taliban needs some international legitimacy for all of their frozen assets to become back to them. They need the money, okay? And also, the Taliban today is dealing with an Afghanistan that is a lot more complicated, and a Taliban that wants to remain in power, and a Taliban that is going to require a lot of expertise of the people that are leaving, and also a Taliban that wants to keep a lot of officials in the government because they know how to do certain things that they don't. So this is for their own survival and also for their own monetarily interests they're this is not a Taliban that is like maybe ideologically different from the Taliban 20 years ago, but this is a Taliban that is strategically smarter than the Taliban 20 years ago, and it's a Taliban that is dealing with a different kind of Afghanistan than the Taliban 20 years ago. So it is expected for things to be different. And again, just because things are not as bad as what we expected right now, it doesn't mean that it might not actually become like that, right? Maybe like 5 months from now, 5 days from now, 5 years from now, or like a decade from now, we're like, oh my God, it's actually a lot worse, right? Like, things can change. But right now, things are encouraging, okay? Things are encouraging. Again, I'm not saying it's going to stay like this. I'm not predicting in the future, but this is bad, but it's not as bad as we anticipate.
Yeah.
Okay. Like a lot of people anticipate.
So this is going to be, I think, a really quick answer. So Armin, don't spend too much time on this. 1143 Mir Jalal is asking, are evangelicals politically the most dangerous Christians in the West? And the answer is yes, they are.
Well, actually, evangelicals are the most religious group in the world, period.
Yeah,
because there's no other religious group that is actually influencing our response to climate change, and that's a cost to the planet more than Hindutva, more than Islamists. The evangelicals are the most costly irreligious groups on the planet.
Yeah, and they influence the U.S. government, like the leaders of the free world.
So foreign policy.
Yeah, so let's move on. I'm trying to find. Okay, so next one is from Al Akbar again. New York has legalized the Mary Jane. So yeah, New York has legalized. That's true. Federally, it's still an issue though. All right. Okay, so Emily at 11:50 p.m. Should we have an ideology test for refugees saying that it's wrong to kill gay people and apostates? I don't know. Huh?
I think so. I think you need to. I mean, I know people could lie, but there needs to be some filters.
You have that. Like, even in every kind of citizenship test that you have, naturalization test, it's always this thing about women's rights and how you treat people equally and all that. So there is those specific questions you could probably have on there, but I just don't know. I think there are other things that are more important. That would be more useful.
I think the cost of those filters are very low. You could those other things that you think are more useful, we could have it in addition to this. I think it would be ridiculous for us not to at least be like asking these questions. I know that's not a perfect filter, but not having that filter, I think, is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't cost anything. They're already answering many other questions. These questions should be included. And if if they can't respect, at least the ones that are not willing to say that they're willing to respect LGBT rights and some other secular values, the ones that can't even lie about it, filtering those ones out, it's a positive, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is there's a lot of actual citizens who are native to the place who don't want LGBT rights or anything. But I mean, there's that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you can't. Well, if you can't remove them because they're already citizens, but we don't have to add to them.
Sure, no, that makes sense. Mir Jalal says, should we be able to tell our kids you can be whatever you want, or is that telling your kid a lie?
That's telling your kid a lie. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you can be whatever you want. When you tell your kid you can be whatever you want, and it doesn't mean they can be Superman. Doesn't mean if they're 5'4" they can be a basketball player. It doesn't, like, it's a spirit of what you're telling them, that if there's anything you want to do,
tell them something more accurate. Tell them something more encouraging. Something encouraging that is not like is more accurate. Even if they're kids and they don't understand that there's some nuance to this, if they grew up and they realize that was like,
I think it's splitting. I think people understand context.
No, they don't. And and also, you could see a lot of people like growing up and like, oh man, my parents told me this and that was a lie. Would you want your kid to grow up with that kind of memory? Just tell them something that is more believable and more accurate, and it's still encouraging, still motivational, but also something that if they remember as an adult, they don't remember their parents as liars.
Yeah, I don't really think that's a lie, but anyway, we disagree. Okay, so let's move on. James, he didn't tag Secular Jihadists, but this is a good one. Ketchup on mac and cheese.
I don't like mac and cheese, but ketchup on most things it's an improvement.
I have the opposite. I love mac and cheese. I don't think I'd have ketchup on mac and cheese ever. Wouldn't happen. Hot sauce, yes. Lost my place. Okay. Should people of hold on. Yeah, okay. This is from Idris, 1203. Should people of foreign parents born in one country be automatically given citizenship? People of foreign parents? Oh, I guess kids of foreign parents born in one country be automatically given citizenship? Should they instead justify time in the country's schools? Should their parents pass a test? I don't fully get it. So should children of born in one country be off? Oh, this is about birthright citizenship. If you're born in a country and your parents are foreign, then should you automatically be given citizenship? Yes, you should. If you're born on a country's land, then you should be able to get citizenship.
Aren't there better ways to decide who to give citizenship
to? If you're born in a country, I like the birthright thing. Yeah. It's cool. If you're born in a certain area, where are you born? Where does that land belong? That's where you were born. That's what you're a citizen of. It's as simple as that.
I just think it's very symbolic. If you're born on this side of the line, you all of a sudden have access to all the rights of this country, and if you're born on this side of the line, you're not. I think it should. Here's the thing. I think it would be an improvement if you give the kids that are not born, for example, in a country, they're born, for example, let's say in a different country, but they grew up in your country, and they are so in line with your language, with your culture. Like if you take away, so for example, let's say a kid was born in your country, but then was taken away and didn't grow up in your country, and your parents are different from a different country and had no idea anything about your country and not the culture, not the language. If that kid doesn't get a citizenship, but another kid who happened to be born outside, but right after came to your country and grew up there, and that's the only language that it knows, the only culture that it knows, that the only family that it knows, only friends that it knows, I think that kid that grew up in your country should get priority over citizenship over the kid that was born in your country but grew up somewhere else.
I think culture and values and language and all these things evolved. If we're talking about the United States, for instance, the United States doesn't have an official language. It doesn't have one. So whatever language it's just I think it's all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I just think the measurement, maybe time in a country, time growing up in a country, rather than just 1 second. It just seems so arbitrary. This 1 second event will determine all your rights, rather than maybe something that is over years. I'm not saying accept less citizens. I just think if you give it to somebody, think about all the kids that grew up only in the United States but haven't happened to be born there. I think those kids and they're not enjoying any citizenship. I just think those kids deserve it.
No. They deserve it. If they've grown up there, then they should get citizenship. I agree with that too. And actually, they should be able to run for office as well, run for president and everything like that, which they're not.
Yeah, I'm just saying relative to those, I would go in favor of those kids rather than somebody that just happens to be born there.
Yeah, I think it's, by the way, there's one thing that I think is really interesting is that when Obama was born in Hawaii, he was born in the U.S., but they said that he wasn't a citizen. Like, the whole birther movement was like over 50% Republicans said he wasn't a citizen. Now, Ted Cruz was actually born outside the U.S. He was born in Canada, but they said he's a natural born citizen because his
army base, though.
Yeah, no, that was McCain. He was born in Panama on an army base. Ted Cruz was born just regular Canada, but he became a natural born citizen. He claimed he was because his mother was American. And what's funny is Obama's mother was actually a Kansas white American woman. So it's really, people have different like legal interpretations of this stuff, and it's all really dumb. So let's go on. We're almost done actually. So let's just take a couple of more questions. Okay, ketchup. People are still talking about ketchup on mac and cheese. Ted Cruz. Someone mentioned that, so I guess. All right. Alza Akbar saying, I feel like I'm the only one asking the important questions. Every question is important. The pineapple on pizza, I think, was the most important question that happened in this entire live stream. So,
yes. Actually, I do. I honestly think that the pineapple on pizza question is a good question, right? Like, I'm not even joking, because I think the fact that makes people have like a fake outrage and fun together, makes light of how much we get angry over other things, and basically it's an attempt to make fun of that. And I think like by doing that, you're actually showing that, people on all sides get together on this fun game, like, oh, let's pretend like we're outraged over something that doesn't matter. And I honestly think that it's a fun game that brings people closer together and makes light of how divided we are over things that we shouldn't be divided over. I think that's why I think it's a good question.
So Aliza saying, the U.S. may not have an official language, but our founding documents are written in English. Yeah, but I mean it's still not an official language. They don't have an official. The U.S. is a nation of immigrants. Nobody, including all the English speakers, were not native to the U.S. It's unique in that sense. U.S., Canada, Australia, to some extent, all three of these countries, they're the most unique countries in the world because they're almost entirely composed of people who came from other lands, right? So I think that whole ideology, like the idea of the nation state thing that you have in Europe, it's a very, very different kind of thinking, and that's why they don't have an official language. Mir Jalal is saying, does the dip in Biden's approval rating tell us even though Americans want troops home, they still like their president a strong man who can kick ass?
Actually, I think the people who like Biden and they don't like this, I don't think they wanted Biden to stay. I think they're just unhappy with the process, not with I think most people agree that this is something that a lot of right-leaning people and left-leaning people agreed with over moving out of Afghanistan being a good thing. I think what is uniting everybody over criticizing Biden, it was the way it was done rather than whether it should have been done.
Yeah, and you really can't evaluate these events while they're happening. So that's another thing. A lot of the stuff really comes down to how it ends up, right? So like the example of the VAX thing that Armin was talking about with Justin Trudeau, like that's a great example. As in, the initial rollout was a complete disaster. Like people were really, really upset about it because it was taking a long time for Canada to get their VX doses. But later on, like when they did it, even though they did it late, they did a really good job of it. And that's really what people remember ultimately. So it all comes out. It's too early to tell. We're right in the midst of it. Let's see what happens. So we can't really speculate about, what this means or interpret it that way.
I think like no matter how who did this, I think there would be some level of disaster whenever you did this and whoever did this. There would be some level of disaster that would go along with taking the troops out of Afghanistan. And I think it's kind of brave of Biden to actually take this upon himself, right? Like this was like a hot potato that nobody wanted to be responsible for, and they would keep passing it on for more. And this was such a coward thing for Trump. Like he on purpose planned the exit from Afghanistan to be at the time that is like right at the beginning of his second term, or the other person's president. Like he didn't want to take responsibility for all the chaos during his first term because he knew the dip that he would get from the exit because if it didn't go proper from the chaos that would come out of coming Afghanistan. So he didn't want that on him, but Biden is doing that on his first term. Like this is actually kind of brave to take this upon yourself, like not delaying. Like Biden could have been like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this now. Maybe I should do this in my second term, or whoever is coming after me, so that I don't have to worry about re-election. But Biden was like, nope, I'm going to get a hit from this. This is going to be devastating, but I'm not going to pass this on to anyone else. We need to get out. So I think actually this is kind of, praiseworthy for Biden to actually do this. Yeah.
No, you've got like around 15 more minutes. So let's go with Blonde Infidel. What do you think the impact of cultural attitudes to parenting has on societies?
Cultural attitudes to parenting. I mean, like it's infinite. Like it's one of the most influential things. Like I don't know where to even start. Like the environment, like this would be like its own stream. What do you think?
That's I mean, you have people in societies that are very different. They're culturally different. They're individually different. There's so much. I mean, when we're talking about actual diversity in terms of the way they think, the way that they deal with things, the way they resolve conflict, the way they approach problems. I mean, so many aspects of life, and a lot of that has that. There's the impact of parenting. There's the impact of teachers. There's the impact of the education system. There's the impact of just overall societal influences, pop culture, everything. So
all of that is cultural attitudes.
Yeah, it's just cultural attitudes. Yeah. So
like, I mean, I can't think of anything else. Okay, so here's the thing.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just show you how big of a deal this is. Like so big of a deal that it's hard for me to come up with other things that actually influence this, because like a lot of people don't understand that everything you judge, society is a mirror that you look at yourself in. Like you might think that you have independent judgments on yourself, and you're evaluating yourself independently from anything in society, but that's impossible, because like every single value or standard that you have, it was because you read something, you saw something from society. I mean, your entire system of evaluation is using the cultural norms that you either accepted or rebelled against. And even when you rebelled against, is because you saw some other form of rebellion that is also its own cultural norm that you could see. Like this is like we don't have any, like as an individual, cultural norms is your measurement stick. Like what other measurement sticks that you have? So when you're talking about cultural attitudes, it doesn't just affect parenting. It's how you measure if you're performing well or not on everything. So of course, parents are also going to understand whether or not they're good parents or bad parents using cultural norms, because that's the only measurement stick that they have. So that obviously it's going to have an impact.
I think she may also be talking about, like, for instance, how East Asian parents, like parents from China and everything, they're, you have the whole tiger mom thing. They make their kids take piano when they're younger. All those things. South Asians focus a lot more on education and STEM and science and math, education ethics, work ethics. The way that whether you're using positive or negative reinforcement to modify the behavior of your kids, and so there's probably that aspect too. But I think the answer remains the same. And I don't think it's as like stereotypical as we think it.
Everything that is influencing your behavior is either environmental or genetical, and environmental could be summarized as culture. So
yeah,
So anyways,
Stony Lonesome, 1213,
or related to culture.
Thoughts on Clinton's presidency and his
Did you miss it?
Oh yeah, sorry, I did. Can we see the impact of parenting on individuals? What about at a societal level?
Oh, I think that's the same question.
Yeah, it's the same thing. We did that. So Idris at 1212. That's what I was saying. Ethnicity is arbitrary, but yeah, they should spend time in the countries of their parents, should have the culture. That's just a comment. So Stony Lonesome, the next question, 1213. Thoughts on Clinton's presidency and his involvement in the Yugoslav wars? So
I don't know. I'm not very well versed enough.
Clinton had a good presidency. I think it was a good presidency. I think he was a very good president. He's a very smart guy. There's the involvement in the Yugoslav wars. I mean, that was like So the thing is, these wars have been going on for a very long time, and the Balkans, the Bosnia, Serbia, everything. They'd been going on for quite a while, but the Americans NATO decided to go in and do something about it at a certain time, right, during Clinton's presidency. And that was around the time when the European Union was really taking shape. The euro currency was about to come out. So anytime you have any kind of instability in the region, political instability, or just geopolitical instability like you had with the Yugoslav wars, you want to resolve that issue before you embark on a really sort of complex and a big economic measure like a new currency in the European Union formation. So I think that they wanted to go in and stabilize it to some extent. Those wars were absolutely horrendous. I mean, it was the ethnic cleansing war. So I mean, the fact that they ended is a good thing. Was it opportunistic in some cases? Yes, it was. But ultimately, I think it was a good thing that there was involvement in those things were taken care of.
And by the way, Ali was had more knowledge on this than I do. But Ali, I actually like when to use the opportunity to say I don't know much about something. When like I know some people, like I noticed like there's some resistance to that, to act like you know about something that you don't. But I want to make sure that I'm not like that. But by taking that like shout it out loud, I was like I don't know this, because I want to be proud of being open, like people like not thinking like when you claim that you have ignorance of something or lack of knowledge of something, some people see that as a sign of weakness. But one thing I want to do is to promote it as strength and as something cool for you to openly admit that you lack information about something, because this is the most intellectual and honest thing to do. So I think like when you say like, oh, actually I don't know about this, you're being more than just intellectually honest. You're actually normalizing more people feeling comfortable when they say they don't know.
When they're saying I don't know,
right?
I think we do that here. Yeah. If there's something we don't know, it's like we don't know about this, we'll look into it, and it's interesting. And I do end up learning a lot here.
Yeah, so. I want. It's not just being honest. I also want it to be a source of pride for people to be so openly. Like I want people to actually feel like I'm a kind of person that will openly yell it out that I don't know about something, because I'm honest enough, and I'm I don't think that this is a weakness. I think it's a strength. Anyways.
So Idris is saying, should there be a lobby advocating for the relaxing of laws regarding genetic experimentation on humans? I know it seems dangerous, but the opportunity cost is huge, I feel. Genetic experimentation on humans, this is a problem with this. This is the work that I do, by the way. And it's I mean, I don't genetically experiment on humans, but this is the general field that I work in a lot. So the thing is, it's not... This is a very, very loose term. I mean, you have gene therapy that you do on humans, and there are gene therapy clinical trials that are happening for medications or for treatments actually that are curing things like stuff like sickle cell anemia, stuff like all these genetic disorders, cystic fibrosis that have been around for ages and that people have suffered with, kids have suffered with. These things are being completely cured, not just treated for life, but totally cured because of things like gene therapy, because of technologies like CRISPR. In cancer, you have CAR T cell therapy. There's all kinds of different genetic-based therapies that are doing this. So, and those do involve experimentation, because you have clinical trials that evaluate these treatments, just like you do with regular conventional drugs, like just the molecules. So there's I don't think there should be, like, it should be regulated. Obviously, I mean, you don't want to go and start making like human monkey hybrids or things like that. And obviously that should be something that's checked, but overall, I don't think that genetic experimentation on humans is it's just not, it doesn't really mean anything. It's so broad. It doesn't really mean anything.
All right. But overall, like when it comes to these kind of experiments that you mentioned, do you think that the laws are too strict or too relaxed overall? Like if you had to...
I think for the clinical trial right now, the laws, the way that they are, the regulations are good. The only thing that I think is not good, which is now not really that much of an issue, but like, for example, in the Bush years, they had stem cell research, like embryonic stem cell research was banned. And I think that really held up a lot of things, unfortunately. There was an advantage to it too, because then you look for alternatives. You look for stem cells, like, adipose stem or fat stem cells and other adult stem cells that you can use. And we found out a lot of interesting things about those and how those could be used therapeutically. But ultimately, like when you have restrictions like that you can't experiment on embryonic stem cells and things like that I think was an issue. But overall, I think that the way that they're going about this and regulating it is a good thing. There is one issue in terms of competition is that, for example, China and some of these other countries, they don't have those kind of regulations. So there's a lot of stuff that would be considered unethical, and you wouldn't do it in a place like the US or in Germany, but then in places like China and everything, they would be more loose with doing that, and they may advance more because of it. So it's there's that kind of competitive element that causes a little bit of tension. But overall, yeah, I think
it's very interesting because this is very interesting because this is also why China is like advancing faster when it comes to rare metals, because the environmental regulations that a lot of other countries have to abide by, China doesn't. So, and
this goes for everything. It goes for like even just overall, even if you have systems of government. If China wants to build a huge building, or Dubai wants to build a huge building or build a bridge or whatever, they just have to give the order. Authoritarian governments, they just tell them. I mean, they don't have to go through all these parliamentary committees and get the budgets approved and have like all this partisan bickering. So ultimately, the democratic process creates enduring advances. There's these things, they may not necessarily be enduring, but they can be. So anyway, let's go on.
Last question.
Last one. Okay, AGA Johanna's asking, Johanna, should Canadian youth 12 to 18 maintain the right to make their own medical decisions, or should the law be changed to give parents full authority over their medical choices? Again, I think it depends.
I'm not in favor of giving parents full authority over anything, because parents could be bad. I mean, a lot of like right-leaning people think like parents should like own their kids as like property, like the government can't step in ever, like as if like they could do whatever they want with them because you came out of their genitals, right? Like you don't own this entity. This is like, you don't get to like treat it any way you want just because that came out of you. Like, so I'm never in favor of giving parents full authority.
And I agree with that. So it shouldn't be full authority. And I think that this really depends. I mean, if there's certain things that Canadian youth 12 to 18 may not understand, like, if they've got a cancer that can be cured by chemotherapy and they just don't want to take chemotherapy, and the parents are like, okay, you got to take chemotherapy. That's fine for the parents to make that decision because it'll be more informed. But then if you have a kid who's like 13 and the parents want to get him circumcised, which is legal, unfortunately, in Canada and in most places, they want to get the boy circumcised, and the boy's like, no, please don't do that to me. Don't mutilate my penis, right? But the parents are like, no, you have to do it because we're Jewish or we're Muslim and this is what we believe in. And then I think the kid should be able to say, nope, I'm not going to do it. Don't mess with my dick, right? And then there's the same thing with abortion, for instance. If there's someone who's 13 or 14 and they don't want to have a baby and the parents happen to be super religious, like, no, you have to carry this baby to full term. And they're like 13, 14, like, no, I don't want to. And they want to get an abortion. Then they should be able to make that choice. So it really depends, I think, on the cases as well. But yeah, full authority to parents, no, absolutely not. If you talk to any pediatrician or social workers that work with kids, the kind of things that parents do, the kind of child abuse cases you have. Parents are they're not as great as these conservatives tend to think that they are. All right, we're good. One more question, 3 minutes or
recommendations.
Recommendations, book, TV show, something or another. What?
Well, I have one, but I forgot the name. But I'm loading it. So, but you go first because I'm loading it to see what I'm going to do right now.
I am going to recommend. I'm going to recommend a book which I had never read before, but I'm kind of like halfway through, which is really good. Tuck Everlasting. Everybody else has read it, so yeah, please do. It's really, it's cool. It deals with immortality in a very, very sort of classical literary way. And what if we could live forever? The other thing that I want to recommend is there's a TV show on Netflix called For Life. I think one season is on Netflix. It's got Nicholas Pinnock in it and Indira Varma, both of whom are British, but they play Americans in the show. It's based on the story of a man, Isaac Wright Jr., who was in prison, and he was convicted for being a drug kingpin, and he had a lifelong sentence, a life sentence. He was serving it, and then he became a paralegal, and he was able to fight his case and get his own conviction overturned. So in this show, they basically show that this guy he ends up getting a law degree while he's in prison. And then he starts advocating for people who are wrongfully accused and wrongfully convicted, and starts winning these cases and takes on the system, and ultimately overturns his conviction. He's working on overturning his conviction. So I thought it was a really, really cool premise for a show. The fact that it was based and inspired on by real story was great. And it's just, it's just a very, very riveting show. So I recommend that. It's called For Life. And
all right. So what? Oh, you done?
No, there's one question I really want to answer from Stony Lonesome. He's saying, should Kim Thale and Matt Cameron and company continue Soundgarden without Chris? No, you can't. You just can't do it. You can't do it. That voice is way too distinctive. If they should, I mean, you can't have the name Soundgarden and not have Chris Cornell in it. They can start other projects for sure, and I'm pretty sure they will, but I really doubt they're going to start Soundgarden without Chris. Anyway, go ahead, Armin, your recommendation.
Right. So, I crap on philosophy a lot. However, I also like studying philosophy because I know a lot of these philosophers had a lot of bad ideas, but I think it helps. I do like studying them and going through their arguments, and just a history. Just go through the history of how people came up with conclusions and why, and try to figure out why they were wrong, and why the more modern ways of coming up with conclusions are superior than the ones that we had before. So I have taken like some courses on philosophy, and some of them are like specifically about a certain time or certain era. But what I'm going through right now seems to be for anybody that is interested in studying philosophy from an issue from one issue, like on an issue by issue basis, right? Rather than like, okay, this is what the Greek philosophers said, this is what the scholastics said, this is what the Enlightenment thinkers said, this is what the French philosophers in the 20th century said. Rather than that, if they want to be like, go through every single like a summary of what the understandings of the analysis was on, I don't know, like the nature of reality, or like on government, or on God, or on, let me see, like the value of testimony or the value of faith. Like if you want to get an overall analysis of all the thoughts and all the and the thinking that went through each topic and the cons, and this the good thing I like about the course that I'm taking right now is that it actually comes up with a judgment call and tells you why some of them are bad and some of them are good. Because a lot of other philosophy courses that I've taken is just like, it just tells you this is how it was, rather than like I do like an analysis of the thoughts rather than just being told like, okay, this is what this guy said and this is what this guy said. So the course I'm taking right now is on Wondrium. By the way, for people who don't know, Wondrium is like the best place, in my opinion, for actually gaining knowledge. I have switched from, as a big fan of Audible, I have actually switched from Audible completely now to Wondrium because of how much I'm learning on Wondrium. I only use Audible for entertainment, fiction-related books now. For learning, I am fully on Wondrium, and the course that I'm recommending right now, which is the philosophy course that I'm taking right now, is called The Big Questions of Philosophy, and it's being taught by Dr. What's his name? Dr. David Johnson. And yeah, all the instructors on Wondrium are like, not all of them, because recently they have added some ridiculous courses. Don't take those. But the traditional courses on Wondrium are by like some of the best instructors on those specific courses in the world. And the reason why I like these courses more than reading books about it is because usually the books that I read is like with a specific, it has a specific goal, and it's like trying to take information and move you to the conclusion that the author had in mind. But these courses is a little bit more unbiased, a little bit less, little less biased, and more of like, this is just the information. It's kind of like an unbiased source of here's what you need to know about this certain topic, right? Rather than like, maybe like sometimes when I'm reading book, I feel like this is propaganda towards, even if I agree with it, I would like, I don't know how honest this is. Like, this seems like I'm being led to a conclusion. But when I'm taking these courses, I feel like I'm just getting what the information is, which is, I trust it a little bit more, and especially given that these are like professors from credible universities with like a lot of good background in teaching and stuff, right? So yeah, the big questions of philosophy by this person that I just mentioned, I forgot his name again, Dr. David K. Johnson, is the course that I'm taking right now, which I recommend. I should become an affiliate for Wandrium, given how much I'm recommending it in these days. But
yeah, we should actually get paid for
I-
these sponsorships, aside from just the
yeah.
the Zionists paying us. Okay, so guys, thank you very much.
D. Brudeau is saying that Wandrium is basically the Great Courses renamed. Yes, they used to be called the Great Courses. They went through a rebranding, and now they're called Wandrium.
Yeah. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, this is a public live stream, so everybody can see this. If you like what you hear here, if you like, please do consider going to patreon.com/SJME and becoming a patron of our show. For as little as $1 a month, you get 5 to 6 episodes a month. You get to watch them on video. You get to interact. You get to send your questions in earlier and have your questions read earlier if you post them on our Patreon link, or you could you can engage live with them. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get a notification every time we have a new video out.
The like button. The like button helps us grow the channel.
Yeah,
so please like the videos.
Yeah, like the videos. And then if you're hearing this on your podcast app or on iTunes, then please go there and give us a rating. And yeah, that's it. So, and then thank you very much.
Thanks. Music guys saying thanks for your answer, guys. See you later. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Like you both. Oh, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mars. Hey, Mars is saying have a great night, fellas.
Yeah, you too, Mars.
Luza is giving us the
Star Trek thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right. Take care.
Oh, be best.
Be best.
We forgot, Ali. Be best.
#